Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new AF chat. My name is Ariel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Appfigures. And I have with me Parker Moore, who is an ASO analyst, and he's going to be helping us talk about App Store optimization for games, for apps, and really the mechanics behind App Store optimization in general, so we can associate them with techniques and with what we're going to be talking about today, intent, one of my favorite topics. So I'm going to let Parker introduce himself, and then we'll jump into talking about this. If you have any questions at any point, throw them into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to get to them during the chat or at the end if we have time, depending. And if you have anything else to share, use the chat. We'll be on this as well. And let's talk App Store optimization. Hey, Parker. Thank you for joining us.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for having me, Ariel. Great to be here. Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Parker Moore. I'm a marketing channel specialist, currently working at Redfin Real Estate. I specialize in App Store optimization. I'll give you a little bit about my background and why I've been asked to talk today. Back in 2016-17, I was in college attending Portland State University and back in the States. It's from Oregon. I co-founded a mobile gaming publisher with a few of my college friends, and I was on the digital marketing side. So I did App Store optimization, Facebook, Google, all that kind of stuff. I spent a few years doing that. Unfortunately, we created 3 games, but unfortunately, the company was never successful. But from that, I leveraged all this experience, and I started saying, hey, this is something that I'm passionate about and something I want to do. I was fresh out of college. I wasn't able to find a full-time job, so I decided to go into freelancing. And so I started off doing freelancing, offering my services on Upwork, and I worked for over 3 dozen games, apps, different types of mobile applications. I worked with dating companies, finance companies, even like idle clickers, kind of just like a whole array of stuff, right? And so kind of the experience that I'm bringing today is just all the freelancing that I've been doing and just my background generally with App Store optimization.
And I think when it comes to App Store optimization, it's some things you need to be very, very dedicated to maybe one channel or one mode of doing things. But App Store optimization has so many different inputs, for lack of a better word, that the more you see, the kind of more dots you have to connect. And having that sort of experience, and in my opinion, and my background is also in freelancing, that gives you so much to work with, and all these different dots connect in your head as you go from Facebook to Google Ads to App Store optimization to everything else. So that's why I think this sort of experience is very unique and very useful in this case. So you started App Store optimization a few years ago. How have you seen things change since you started?
Yeah, I'm sure the industry's changed a lot, and I've definitely been keeping tabs on it. But when you're starting off and you're an amateur and you don't really know what's what, it's hard to say, how the times have been changing, right? But back then, with App Store optimization, even now, I'd say it's still relatively in its infancy, just because with App Store optimization, both the Android and iOS store, we don't have a lot of great insight as to where like organic, like App Store optimization in its core is all just about increasing the visibility of your app, right? Trying to get as many people organically to download your app, whether that's trying to increase the search conversion with keyword optimization, or people coming to your page and trying to increase that view to install conversion ratio, right, with your creatives. And so back when, and I say it's in its infancy because with iOS and Android, both of them don't have great insight into where are my organic downloads coming from, right? Like what keywords are specifically driving that. I know Google or Android's been a little bit better about that, where you can see search terms now, but you're not really sure, well, is this organic? Is this including paid? Trying to separate the two, it's a little bit of a headache right now. And so it's interesting coming into this field and being able to work with it and being able to grow with it, and being able to talk with companies like you that say, hey, as an App Store optimization specialist, these are some of the issues that I would like to be solved, business problems that would be solved, and being able to talk with you and relaying that, and then being able to incorporate that into your products is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the visibility is such a big problem. We just had a conversation about this before we started the webinar, about the difference between daily updates for keyword ranks, for those of you who do this enough, and hourly. updates. We have invested a lot of time and effort and a lot of things into making hourly updates. And I believe that because we have that visibility, updating things and understanding the impact of an update is a lot easier. And that is not even a thing that exists industry wide at this point. And something similar happened with category ranks way back in the late 2000s when we started. Also, we brought this hourly ranking, and now it has become an industry standard just because it makes so much sense to see trends over time in such a granularity. And you started talking about how ASO is visibility, organic downloads, and that's a good segue into the meat of this webinar. And that is, when it comes to ASO, there are a lot of techniques, a lot of strategies. I talk about a lot of them in the guides, and I've talked about them last week in our live teardown video. In case you haven't seen it, we'll put a link in the chat. And that's a big set of things that you have to know. That's knowledge, that's some call wisdom. But when it comes to apps versus games, I've heard a lot of concerns about, well, ASO doesn't work for games, or ASO doesn't work for these sort of apps. And that's, one, not true in my opinion, and from what I've seen. But I have someone here who knows both apps and games. Is that true? Does it not work for games versus apps?
No. I'd say no. Yeah. So apps for optimization, apps and games, it's gonna work for both. Apps for optimization, it's really just when you're coming to the keyword side of things. In order to bolster your app, no matter if it's a game or if it's kind of a utility app or whatever it may be, you're going to need that the title, relevant keywords in your title, your subtitle, depending on if you're on Android or iOS, and your description, right? And all of that is just going to help to increase your visibility within the App Store. So I definitely say, both. It's going to help both for sure.
Yeah, and I think that makes the most sense. So the real question is, when we start thinking about the differences, if the tools are the same in theory, if the strategies are similar enough, what differentiates the two of them from what you have done before?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of to answer this question, I want to take a little bit of a step back and try and understand maybe like how a user that you're trying to get to download your app would approach the App Store and how they would kind of view it as they're kind of navigating their journey through the App Store. And so one of the questions I want to start off with is like, why do people download apps versus games? And so this was a question I thought to myself last night as preparing for this, right? I was thinking, okay, well, what are some of the type of apps out there? You have like dating apps, you have budgeting apps, you have social media apps, even like, or paid surveys, right? And a lot of these, I in my mind, I've boiled it down to like, apps are really a way of improving the efficiency of some sort of a process. So to give you an example, for dating, you have Tinder, right? It's to improve the speed at which you meet people, you chat, you get to know them. It just increases the efficiency of the whole dating process, right? With budgeting and finance apps, you get everything in one consolidated place, all your finances together. You have the computer doing automatic calculations. It saves you time. The only one that I thought that might break this kind of pattern would be like the paid survey app, where you're casually making money, right, in your free time. But then I even thought, well, no, that's also improving the efficiency of a process. You're trying to make money. You can do it from home, right? You don't have to get up. You don't have to go leave your home. You don't have to do all these things. It just makes it a lot easier to make money, right? And it improves the process. And so that's kind of what in my mind, and you can disagree with me if anyone in the chat, feel free to speak up too. But this is what I've been kind of thinking, right? And so that's kind of in my mind. That's what the kind of utilitarian apps are for. When you're talking about apps versus games, that's kind of like at their core what they're trying to do, right? And then on the flip side, when we're talking about games, what's the purpose of a game? Why are people creating games? Really, generally speaking, it's for fun. People are trying to escape reality. They're trying to relax a little bit. They're trying to do something in their free time. Unless you're playing like a Call of Duty or maybe some like League of Legends, like a really competitive hardcore type of game, right? Maybe they're just doing that to I mean, it's still fun for them, but it's definitely a little bit more intense, right? But yeah, so with that, it's kind of these two dueling purposes, where apps, you have like, you're trying to just improve this efficiency of a process, and then with games, games is just like really just trying to have fun. Now, I did find one exception here, which is entertainment apps. So like Netflix or something like that. You'd say, okay, well, that's not a game, but isn't that also for fun? And to that, I'd say, yeah, I definitely agree with you. So really, this might be more of a conversation of apps versus like more just like entertainment. But for the purposes of this talk, let's just try and keep the apps versus games, right?
Yeah, that's such a good way of saying this. I have no disagreement here at all. Um, and the kind of the gist of all of this is that at the end, people are looking for something. That's undeniable. And what they're looking for and how they're looking for it really is the difference. And that's the basis of App Store optimization in general. So if people are looking for something, how do you put something in front of them? And in a world where, let's say, we did not have a search algorithm or anything like that, we wouldn't really need to worry about it. So if you think about the physical world in stores, you would make your store the way that your potential users would be looking for it. So your display would be displaying what they want to see. If you're Netflix, you'd be showing off videos. If you're a game, you'd be showing off things that are relevant for fun. If you're a calculator app, you'd show a huge calculator up front. But as you go into search engine optimization, now we have this algorithm that helps us decide what the display will end up looking like in a way. And so you have to. I see App Store optimization as us helping the algorithm understand what our app or game or entertainment experience, what it's really all about. So ultimately now we have to know what our users want, and we have to translate that into what the algorithm will understand that the users want from their word selection in this case. And that's when it becomes interesting. So if I am trying to optimize a real estate app, because that's a good example, I might be looking for a cheap rental. But then if I'm looking for a game, a cheap rental would be sort of a benefit of this game, of this app. And every app has slightly different benefits, so it's very clearer, I would say. But then you come to a game, and the game is, what are you going to say? You're going to say, I want more fun. And more fun is something that's going to be really hard to battle for. So now you're starting to think, I have a game that offers this type. Let's say it's a car racing game. People are not going to look necessarily for the features of a car racing game, like customizing cars. But they might look for the end results, which is racing or racing tournament or things like that. So I think that's the beginning of talking about intent. And I see intent a lot in my guides and in other places and webinars, because I see it as, if you know your audience and you know that they're looking for something to spend some time with, have some fun, escape from reality, their intent when they look for it is a little bit different than if they're looking for something to kind of save them from doing something else, whether it's convenience and doing things a little bit more quickly, or maybe even be smarter with a calculator that does conversions that they don't have to do in their head or go to Google or anything like that. So the real question is, how do you understand that intent, and how do you translate, once you understand who your user is and what sort of ideas they have in mind, what sort of maybe even desires, how do you kind of normalize that towards the App Store or Google Play in that sense when it comes to a game where it's more about the direct emotional benefits in a way, and apps where it's just, I need to get something done, give me the right feature and I'll get it done.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. As you're saying, like, apps, or as I was saying as well, apps are, mainly more about that utilitarian kind of thought process where it's just used to improve the efficiency, right? But to break it down, I'd like to go maybe a little bit more in depth, since we talked a little bit about the output of each and what each is trying to find. I'd like to talk maybe a little bit more about the input variables and the tools that we use to get people there, and how each kind of strategy or tool is different depending on whether we're looking at apps or games. Would that be something I could?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar, App Store optimization specialists, have kind of two really big tools in their toolbox, which would be keyword manipulation, right, to try and improve search within the app stores, or you can look at your creatives, right? So once they find your app using search with keyword manipulation, they come to your app store page, and then you want to optimize your creatives towards the user's intent, as Ariel would say, whether that's, you know, the apps or the games, right? So let me just kind of break this down a little bit further, and let's start off with looking at the keyword manipulation and maybe how that differs for apps versus games, right? So I thought about this a lot, and I did a lot of research on this in my own time and reflecting back on a lot of people or companies that I've worked with, and really I couldn't find a really big differentiator on the keyword side from apps versus games, right? Like really my process for finding keywords is, you know, I'll tell you, let's say I'm working with a freelancer, they gave me the name of their app, I'll go to the app, I'll look at the app store page, I'll look at their keyword metadata, right? So I'll look at their title, subtitle, description, get a feel for what the app is. And then I'll also look through, maybe I'll look through their reviews, right? Then I'll say, okay, who are your competitors in the space? And I'll do the exact same process with their competitors and just pull keywords from there, maybe keyword like single word keywords or multiple keyword terms, right? And so those are just a few of the places I look at. Another thing that you know, you can also do is like go onto the company websites, both the person that you're working for, or if it's your own company, you can go on your website, you know, look through the descriptions, and then also your competitors as well, right? And so that's just kind of where I get this combination of keywords that I use, and I try and I guess strategize or optimize towards when I'm creating the title, subtitle, and all the kind of keyword metadata. But really, to answer the question, in my opinion, there's no real big difference between apps and games when it comes to the keywords you use. Now, you could make an argument about, well, maybe the sentiment of the keywords you use. Like if you're wanting to do a game, you could say like, okay, well, the types of keywords I want to use, maybe they're going to be, you know, maybe I have a fun game, right? Maybe I have like a fun platform game similar to Mario, and I want to use keywords that have kind of like a joyful feeling to them or like a positive connotation to them. And you can kind of break it down to that level. And that's a little bit of what I do. So I guess there is a little bit of a difference depending on, you know, whether you're doing apps and games. Now that I'm just kind of thinking about it out loud. But the overall process of trying to find the keywords is very similar.
Yeah, that's the tool we have, but the keywords will then need to adjust in order to do that. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then so the second part here that I can go into a little bit, but before I do that, should we be taking any? I feel like there's a few questions out there we should answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do that. So
Sure.
Vlad is asking, what's the number one factor influencing apps' visibility, in your opinion? Any difference to games? I feel like we're in that spot. We're talking about the tools. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I can give my opinion on it. Yeah, so I'd say the number one most influencing factor for apps visibility uh, would probably be how big's your marketing budget is what I'd say there. But if you're talking about app store optimization, it'd most likely be the title, I'd say. If you're trying to just increase your app's visibility and you're trying to use app store optimization strategies, you definitely want to optimize and get the biggest and you know, the biggest as in highest volume keywords. The ones that you're really trying to optimize towards, put those in your title. The second most, you put them in your subtitle. If you're on iOS, you put the third most in your keyword bank. If you're on Android, you put them in your description, right? Ariel, did you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, I think that's really where it starts, and to an extent, it's in my opinion, it's not necessarily about the popularity of keywords is very important, but you have to match the popularity to what I call attainable. And so if, let's say right now, I'm trying to compete for the word Instagram, and I want to do that with an app that's getting maybe 10 new ratings a week and 7 downloads a day, it's impossible. I mean, Instagram is one of the most popular keywords on the App Store right now. It's one of the biggest keywords on the App Store right now. So if I want to target it and I don't have any sort of momentum, it's going to become very difficult for me to do that. So beyond using the keywords right in the name, it's using the right keywords in the name. And like you were saying, Parker, using the most important ones in the name, slightly less important ones in the subtitle, and all the rest basically in either the description on the Google side or the keyword list. That makes perfect sense if you're doing them right. But what I've seen, and that's kind of the biggest issue that people take with App Store optimization, is they optimize for the biggest keywords and they don't get the results they want because their apps don't really match the competitiveness that's necessary to rank well for them. And if you think about it, the reason is because Apple, Google, they have all these apps that they want to rank. And it's competitors, it's apps in your category, it's apps that are doing the same thing in their own way. And they have to decide who to put first, who to put second, who to put third. And they use actual performance. So they'll use keywords to understand that you're related. Your app is related to this keyword, whether it's that real estate, so cheap rentals that we talked about before, or a racing game. So they know that you're relevant for this keyword. But if another cheap rentals app has 10 times your downloads or 10 times your ratings, two indicators that Apple and Google use, they're going to use those and they're going to float them up to the top, and you're just not going to be able to do it. And so, I think visibility comes from, when it comes to keywords, the name for sure in those, and also your performance second, but you can always kind of toy with that because you know the way they're related. And that also is a good lead in to Andre's question about how important ASO is for a paid app. Paid apps get a significantly smaller number of downloads, I think, overall from everything I've seen. And it's probably reasonable to say that if you are just competing on downloads, it's going to be difficult. Not impossible. I have seen paid apps that are outranking free competitors. It's not common. But if you think back to, you still have that name, the subtitle, and the description, or the keyword list. If you find those keywords where you can actually compete, where you have the right performance, you can definitely be the number one solution. There is another problem that comes with that, and I don't think the goal of ASO, or the first step of ASO, should be to go to freemium, but I think freemium is overall a friction-reducing payment method. And the reason for that is, so you're number one with your paid app, and you have outranked and outmatched everyone else. But then when a person, because there is a person on the other side, they're thinking, should I try number one that costs $1.99, or should I try number two, which is free? I'll try number two because there's no commitment here. I'm not spending anything. I'm not paying anything. If it sucks and it's terrible, I'm just going to delete it. And then I might try the $1.99 one. So I don't think the first step of ASO is to move to freemium, but I think that freemium in general affords more opportunities to get users. It doesn't apply to all apps. It doesn't apply to all games. Obviously, there are always things that make more sense as a paid app, especially around professional software, maybe, especially. I lost myself. But the idea that you can have that is probably applies to your app for your app. If you can go to freemium, and it does make sense from a business perspective, irregardless of, that's not a word. I don't know where I'm going here, but if you can actually sustain that sort of a business model, it might be better for you. And that's a decision that shouldn't come from marketing, shouldn't come from App Store optimization, I should say, but should come from understanding your market itself and your audience in a way their intent, but also what else is out there. What do you think about this, Parker?
Yeah, no, well put. I don't think I could have really added much. In my own experience, the only thing I might be able to add here is that, I've worked with paid apps before. I worked with kind of like a cartoon. It was a cartoon app where you can kind of make like your own cartoon avatar of yourself. And I worked with a girl who's based out of Russia, who's designing this herself and did all the code and everything. And she had it was like $5.99. And so she didn't get a lot of downloads. However, like on this few days where she might do like Apple search ads to get a few more extra downloads, right? I would see her category rank jump up from like maybe like I don't even know, like 100 for paid apps in her category to like the top 20 or something like that. And so one advantage to working with a paid app is that potentially you don't need a lot of downloads to really see a spike in your category rank, right? And so if that's something you're trying to do, I mean, at the end of the day, you really just want to get as many downloads as you can, and then hopefully get as many subscribers or as many paying customers as you possibly can, right? But if you're trying to increase your category rank, go paid, buy a few downloads. I've seen that work pretty well.
Interesting. It does make sense. I mean, the conversion rate from free to paid on a paid app is 100%. So all you need to do is get the download. There are a few more questions here. There's one in particular that I think would take us to number 2, I think, on your list. Yeah, and sure. That is, George is saying, hello, in your opinion, should we consider ASO as a way to increase visibility and volume or to improve your conversion rate? And I think the answer to that is both, because keywords will help you increase visibility and volume. But number two on your list is going to increase conversion. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's a good way to bring it back. So my second tool strategy that I use for App Store optimization is yeah, that looking at conversion rate. So people, once they find your app, you want to increase that view to install, right? And so that how you do that is again optimizing for intent. It's going to be a little bit different depending on what kind of app you're using. So whether that's just like the general app or like are you optimizing for a game, right? So let me break this down a little bit to the different creatives that we have to work with within the app stores. So I see three main creatives, and there are definitely other ones, but these are going to be the most important, which is going to be the icon, the screenshot, and video. And you have like banners and you have some other promotional kind of like small images that you can use, but the biggest ones that I've seen is going to be the icon, screenshot, and video when you're talking about creatives and you're talking about increasing your view to install conversion rate. So starting off, maybe I'll start off with the ones that I believe maybe in order are going to be the best for increasing that view to install conversion rate. And so, I think, sorry, take it back. Least to most important. So in my mind, and this is just my opinion, but in my mind, I see the icon as the one of the least important of screenshots and video, right? And so if we're talking about the differences between icons for apps versus games, let's start off with like looking at the app side of things. So for icons, when you're looking at apps, you're really looking at an icon that is usually going to be the icon's usually representation of something that's like a functionality or a feature within the app. It's usually pretty distinguishable. And I guess I was saying is related to a core feature that the app has, or it could just be like a company logo. So to give you an example, like Amazon, for example, their logo that they recently updated is related to the core feature, which is that the logo or the app icon is just a logo of a package, right? It's just a box, right? And that's their core feature. That's what they do. They ship box. They do mail, right? And that's their thing. Alternatively, you have app icons like Facebook, which is just their kind of brand logo, which is their F, right? Or Snapchat, which is their logo, which is the ghost, right? And so those are some things on the apps side of the icons that you can do. And those are the things that I've kind of seen work. But you don't, in my mind, you don't have as much creativity and things you can play around with until you get into the game side of things. So really quickly looking at the game side of things for icons. So in my opinion, I wrote down a few notes of what you can do on the game side. So again, you could do the company logo, of whatever you're working for, right? Or so alternatively, you have a little bit more options that you can work with. So like if you have a video game, you probably have like characters inside your video game. So you can use video game characters as like the star logo. For example, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Clash of Clans, which is like one of the biggest mobile games ever, right? Their app icon right now is the barbarian, right? And that's like kind of their main guy, and that's the character that they use. And not only that, it's like a staple character. It's like one of the first characters that you unlock within the game, so it's just very recognizable for people that play that game, right? And so that's one thing that I've seen. And to break that up even more, when you're talking about characters, you're talking about increasing the view to install conversion rate. You don't just want to plaster your character's face onto the app icon. You want to be a little bit more nuanced than that. You want to see, okay, what kind of emotion am I trying to elicit from my user? Like, what kind of emotion do I want on my character's face? What kind of colors do I want in the background, and what kind of emotion do those colors correlate to? So you can really look at every single aspect inside of that icon to determine, exactly how you want your user to feel when they're looking at your icon and potentially thinking about downloading it. And the last point I wanted to make here for icon that you could potentially do would be images that most closely resemble items or things related to the in-app experience or in-game experience. So to give you an example, if you look at Minecraft, the game, their icon right now is a block, right? And if you asked anyone to say, hey, what's Minecraft about? You say it's building and destroying blocks, right? It's like the symbol of the game. It's like the main item related to the in-game experience. One more example would be like Pokemon Go. Their app icon right now is a Pokeball, and that is like universally known. Like a Pokeball is Pokemon, and people associate the two right away, right? So it's not necessarily the company's logo, but it's definitely a copyrighted image by that company that's recognizable and something that people use, right? And so that's just kind of my take on the icon and the differences between apps and games.
I think that makes sense on the icon front. Even though I do believe that yes, the icon is probably the least, I would say, optimizable graphic that you can have because one, it's small, and two, people normally just read the name and scroll down to the screenshots. We did did this event a while back in our office pre-COVID, and one of the participants said that they A/B tested having different elements in the icon, and so version A of the icon was their usual branding, and version B was hand tapping a button. Why specifically hand tapping a button, I'm not entirely sure, but they said that increased conversion by 15% on its own.
Wow.
And I thought that was really interesting. And it was a ticket purchasing app. So concert tickets, game tickets, all those. That only seems to have happened on Android because on iOS, they still have the branded icon. So I'm not sure if they tried it on iOS and it didn't work, or because A/B testing on iOS is a lot more wonky and harder to test. But that was an interesting one for me. I've not tested it myself on either our app or one of the apps that I've seen before, but that could be an interesting one. I think it's probably one of those micro optimizations when you've optimized everything else so many times that you just don't have anything else to test, and you do it. But until you get there, there are probably better ways.
Yeah, potentially, or maybe everyone listening right now, change your icon to a finger tapping a button. Maybe you'll increase conversion rate right away. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll talk again in a week.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
Yeah, yeah, not advised. We're gonna cut this from the video later.
Gotcha. Awesome.
So that's
yeah,
the icon. Next.
Yeah. So next in the array of items that we use for conversion would be screenshots. And so in order, I'd say icon would be the least for increasing view to install conversion rate, and then screenshots would be the next, and then video. But when I was thinking about, what can I do with screenshots and videos that are separate from apps and games, I really found that the answer about the differences between the two is very similar. So I'm going to be kind of talking about both at the same time, and yeah, we'll just kind of go from there, I guess. So looking at apps. When you're thinking about either the screenshots or the video, you're really stuck to kind of limited to the core functionality of what the app is, right? And that's what I've seen time and time again across all apps is really, it's just like you show off the features within the app. Like let me give you an example. So like Snapchat, for example, right? A few of the main features in Snapchat would be like, you can take a picture and that'd be one screenshot. You can chat with friends, that'd be another screenshot, and you can record videos, that's another screenshot. And so you're showing off what you can do within the app. Now, sometimes you see apps take it a step further, where if it's like a real estate app, you could say, okay, maybe there's another screenshot that says, it shows off like you can tour homes, something like that, and then blah, blah, blah. And then the last screenshot would be like, save 1% or only 1% listing fee or something like that. And so in this screenshot, what they're doing is they're showing a benefit to the user, which is kind of special. And that's something that you should definitely be paying attention to if you're optimizing towards apps. You definitely want to try and always keep in mind, why is the user downloading this app? You definitely want to do your background research, understanding your key demographic and what brought them there. And then also trying to present those into the screenshots, because the screenshots, you don't want to hide anything in the screenshots. You want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. You want to make sure that your screenshots are about to go to prom and you're putting on a tuxedo and you're making them look very snazzy. You need to comb their hair, the whole 9 yards, right? You need to make those look really good and presentable, right? But so in my mind, that's kind of the thing that I've seen, and the thing that really differentiates from games. And the reason it differentiates from games, if I can start talking into that a little bit about that, would be so when you're trying to optimize towards games and you're looking at screenshots or videos, what I've seen is that you're really just trying to show off the in-game experience, and it's a lot less focused on the features of the app. Like, for example, you have like a first person shooter game, and you don't want like a screenshot that says like shoot a gun, and then you're shooting a gun or something, or like run around an empty town or something like that, and then it shows that. You want to show off like the in-game experience and what the person is potentially going to be feeling when they're playing the game, right? And experiencing when they're in the game. But if you're really trying to increase your view to install conversion rate, and you're really trying to sell your app, there's this thing that so I used to work for, if you're familiar with the casual gaming mobile publisher Voodoo. I used to work with them a little bit and trying to create games, and I had access to their kind of insider portal, and they'd give out tips to anybody who was working with them about how to improve your screenshots and videos. And one thing that I learned from working with a hyper casual game company for a while is that when you're creating screenshots or videos, you want to show off what they call the fever moment, or the most satisfying moment inside of your game. So let me give you an example of that. So like if you're talking about like a role-playing game, right? A game where like World of Warcraft, where you go out, you collect equipment, you build up your character, you get stronger over time. In your video, what you want to do, and this is something that I've seen in ads and other videos, just generally in the App Store, is you want to show off the most aesthetically pleasing, the most epic, the rarest loot, the best loot inside of the game. You want to show off, exactly what that user can become, and the best of it, right? So like you can have a video of like, a person walking up to a crate. Maybe it's someone, with just a peasant outfit, right? They walk up to this beautiful treasure chest, they open it up, a blue mist pops out, envelops their whole body, and then out comes this gladiator with awesome armor, big battle axe, looking really cool, maybe throwing spells around, stuff like that. And the user sees that and they say, whoa, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's what I want. And so you really need to try and find that moment in your game that keeps the user playing, that keeps the user engaged, the moment that really is most satisfying, the thing that everybody is trying to work towards in your game. And that's going to look different depending on the game. So let me give you one more example really quickly, that's completely unrelated to like role-playing games. So like a puzzle game, for example, right? Let's say like Candy Crush, for example. So what would be the kind of satisfying or fever moment inside of Candy Crush? Well, that would be, in Candy Crush, if you're not familiar, it's just like a puzzle game, match 3, where you put, you match jelly beans 3 colors in a row. All of them disappear, and then, you have the jelly beans from the top, they drop down in the screen, right? And you're just trying to match. It's just like a basic match 3 game, right? But the fever moment in that game would be like, let's say you match a jelly bean, and then 3 match, and then a few more fall down, and more happen to match without you doing anything, and then a few more fall down and they break, and more keep matching, and it just goes on and on and on, until you just see like this kind of cascading effect of all these jelly beans being matched, and your points are going up, you're getting a new high score, and it's just going, it's really exciting. It's that kind of moment that you need to find within your game that you can demonstrate in either still images in your screenshots or in the video, capturing that. And that's the kind of thing that people are looking for on the game side. And that's really my 2 cents.
That goes back to what you started saying before about that feeling versus the I need to get something done. So if you are talking about screenshots, screenshots specifically, because screenshots and videos, the line blurs eventually, in my opinion. And for those of you who read the weekly app teardowns that I do, you know that I have a weak spot for good screenshot sets, and that I'm still looking for an app that has a good video, and that does not seem to happen. I think we've gone through maybe 7 teardowns in season 3 and no video yet. But going back to screenshots, so the idea that you're showing kind of what the user is expecting, and the expectation changes between apps and games when you have this moment of happiness, this moment of, oh, this happened, yes. When you kind of like the win moment, that is great for games, because if you're thinking about games as something that gives you pleasure, gives you fun, and it's more of an experience, an emotional experience, that's exactly what you want to show off. So you want to show off that it will give you fun. And if you are downloading a calculator, calculators are not really fun, but they serve a purpose. I looked at a calculator last week in our live teardown, and that's why I keep going back to that. But a ratio converter, or not a ratio converter, but a units converter, is going to give you something that you don't want to do in your head. Miles to kilometers, for example, or cups to ounces, whatever it is that you're doing. If you just type it into a thing, it's so much easier. So it's not going to be pleasurable for me to do this because I just need to have this one conversion done. But is it going to give me what I want? And if the answer is yes, then that's it, sold. So for apps, the way I see it is you have to sell what the user will expect. For games, it's the same thing, but it's more of a feeling as opposed to a feature. But something that I've seen that is actually interesting, and I've seen that in real estate apps happening more and more, is I've seen apps do videos that are kind of a walkthrough of the screenshots. So the video is not a slideshow. It's still a video showing the UI in action, showing what you can tap and what you can scroll and all the things that you can do. But they highlight what you can do with a caption that is very similar to what you would see in the screenshot. And I think that's a great idea for apps. How does that work for you when you see that?
I've seen that. I've seen that multiple times, and you're exactly right. Since I'm working for Redfin right now, so I'm looking at all my competitors in the real estate market, right? And I'm seeing that trend, and that really comes back to what I was saying, where you're really limited with apps in terms of what you can do with the screenshots and videos to, in my mind, mostly showing off the functionality and just presenting what's in the app itself. On the iOS store, you're limited in the video to just showing off the app itself, right? You can't take videos outside the app. For example, you can't show people using the app. You can really just show the content of the app itself and what's inside of it. So in that sense, you are limited to what you have to work with. So it's really just trying to, if you're really trying to optimize the video, I'd say start with optimizing your app, optimize the UI, optimize the experience, gamify your app if you can, right? Try and bring in some of those fun moments from that you've learned, the game side, and bring that into the app and make it like, a more rewarding experience for your users. But yeah. So that's all I'd have to say there.
So there's a question here that kind of aligns directly with screenshots. Robin is asking if there is a difference between screenshots that are singular, meaning each screenshot is a screenshot, versus screenshots that take one kind of graphic and spread it across multiple screenshots. I believe Uber Eats was doing something like this not too long ago. I've seen a whole bunch of apps and games do something like this. What is your experience with it working versus not working?
Yeah, I'd say that really depends on, in my experience, whether you're optimizing towards an apps versus a game, right? So what I've seen when it comes to apps, when people are trying to just, back to what I was saying at the very beginning, improve the efficiency of a task, they're just trying to get something done. It's nice to see something that's a little bit flashy and graphics that overlay and cascade over multiple images. But really, they're just trying to see, okay, what's the net benefit for myself, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, I've seen that, just kind of basic still images that don't cascade tend to convert a little bit better on apps than they do on games. So on games, and this is all just in my personal experience, but on games, I've seen, when you cascade over multiple images, you have like a character laying across multiple borders of the maybe in portrait mode images, right? I see a little bit better conversion there, but it really ultimately depends on what your app is, the content of your app, and maybe the characters or the features that you have to work with. So with App Store optimization, I wouldn't say there's one answer to any app or what in terms of what works for conversion. So really, you just need to be iterating and constantly testing, and that's really what I do. It's all just about making sure that you are always looking at different ideas and perspectives and trying those out in your own images or screenshots.
I completely agree. I was going to basically say that would have been my response. Test everything. And the thing is, testing on iOS is not as easy as testing on Google Play. It's not that it's not easy. It's a different kind of testing. But I think testing is more of a mindset than access to tools in any way. And so if you're thinking, I'm going to try this set of screenshots, and then I'm going to try a different set of screenshots later, try to eliminate all other inputs. So don't change your marketing spend if you are doing any sort of marketing spend. Don't start new campaigns, all of those things, and do enough time. do each for enough time, that should give you something. So even if it's not going to be statistically significant by those numbers, it's still going to give you an idea of what works. And it sounds like that was a question. What the question was about, and that is the company did try spreading it across multiple screenshots as a single graphic, and it didn't convert well, and that's plausible. Again, going back to some apps will enjoy that benefit if there's a larger idea maybe behind it. And some apps you just want to see, can I do it? Yes, check, move on with life and download it. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, that goes back to the whole idea of intent. The intent is the intent. I have a very specific need. Is this going to answer it for me? Or I'm looking for something to enjoy. And then you need slightly more explainable or explanations. I would say. There's a follow-up question that I want to touch on from Kyle, who's saying that he noticed some successful apps and games don't have videos, and he believes that they A/B test everything, so why don't they have a video? And I've seen this too. I've seen this and I talked about it, and every teardown that I do, I usually look for a video, and I am interested in seeing why there is or there isn't a video. But beyond the yes or no, videos come in a bazillion shapes and forms. There's some things you can show, there's some things you can't, there's some things you can do in the flow, some things you can't. And so it's always difficult to say, is it just a Boolean, a yes or a no to a video? But what are your thoughts on video versus not video?
Well, generally, I'd say if you want to use a video, or sorry, if you're working with a games app, typically I'd want to use a video, right? To really like take those kind of satisfying moments, that those win moments, as we were talking about earlier, and really show the full length of what that is, right? It's hard to capture that in just a still image. In the case of, you know, some successful games or apps not using a video, so yeah, I've actually seen that. So I've worked with, you know, some of the apps I've worked with before include, say like Everlance, Data Camp, and then I'm currently working with Redfin right now, which are all kind of big apps in their own right. But you know, I've seen working with those, you know, testing with a video, without a video, what works. And you know, I've seen with some of the bigger apps that working, you not using a video or not including a video tends to convert a little bit better. And trying to validate that is a little bit hard on, especially on iOS, since you know, you're kind of limited to either using the test results of like a Google Play experiment, store listing experiment, right, and trying to do conversion there, or if you have like Store Maven or Splitmetrics or something like that. But it's always kind of hard to track that kind of conversion. But yeah, so I mean, if they don't have a video, and I'm assuming that they tested it before and saw that it just wasn't converting as well without a video. You know, again, it really just depends on the app, and you know, different methods work for different people and different users and different intents, right? It's very, very situational, you know, what I would do in terms of App Store optimization per the type of app and the category and the intent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to experiment with it. Like I said, you can't, it's not just that you have a video. You can have a really terrible video. And when I, as a user, go into the App Store and I see your app and I see a terrible video, I may not continue browsing beyond that. So if you're not willing to spend the time to actually make a nice video, that is probably not something you should do. But you can say the same thing about screenshots. If you don't take the time to have quality screenshots, to play with the colors until they're right, to play with the sizes until they're right, it really goes towards conversion. So bad screenshots, less conversion, poorer conversion. With video, I think it's just a lot harder to get video done right. Video is more complicated. Less developers have the skill set necessary to make a really production-worthy type of video, whereas enough people know how to throw a few things into some sort of an image editor, not even Photoshop, and get something that is kind of okay to look at. And that can be said about larger teams too. Just because a larger company or a larger team does not have a video does not necessarily mean that a video doesn't work. It just means that their video didn't work if they A/B tested it. So if you think that you can show off your that win moment for your app, whether it's a really amazing feature that your app does so well because you spent countless nights working on it, or if it's a game and there's this moment where it's just going to be so fun, then give it a try. I don't think it can hurt you enough to the point where you lose your business if you run your app, even without a real A/B test. Just upload a video for a few weeks and see what happens. And that's usually my approach to these sort of things. I don't believe that videos are inherently bad for apps, and I don't think that the conversion will decrease. But if you do it poorly, then just like anything else, you do it poorly and it's not going to work well. That's my take on it. Also, on the side of Apple, we have to remember that Apple is kind of strict around these things. They're less strict with smaller companies, as interesting as that may be, but they're more strict with the larger companies. So some of the companies that I did a teardown on, and I said, why don't they have a video? And I also tried to ask the question of, did they actually A/B test it? Some of those actually replied to me on private channels or on Twitter, and we had a conversation around why they don't have a video. And usually the reason is Apple didn't like our kind of video. And if we were to go by Apple's rules, we just have the screenshots play over time with no captions, and they didn't like that. So keep that in mind when you're trying to say, but these big guys don't do it, so maybe it doesn't work. It's not always necessarily like that. We're running very low on time, but there are two questions that have to do with keywords specifically around games. One is from Eric, who's asking if we should include misspellings of a game's name in its name, and he gave the example of Solitaire, and Solitaire missing an I. And there's another question that I saw, is this from Steven, who's asking what sort of keywords should we put in the name for a game? And I think those kind of come together. I'll take a quick stab at it, and then you can take this, Parker. But the idea is when it comes to finding the right keywords, and we talked about how important keywords are to this, goes again to looking at the data. And so should you include a misspelling? My initial thinking is no, because characters are precious, especially in the name of the game or the name of the app. The subtitle, they're very limited. They're a little bit less limited on the Android side of things, but they're still limited. There's a finite amount that you can put in. And so you don't really want to waste it on something that may potentially not have any sort of real reward. So the real question is, will this give me benefit? And that you can check by looking at data. So you can look at something like the keyword popularity. You can look at other apps that are ranking in that keyword and seeing what their sort of performance is, and then see if it's even worth trying to compete over it. Because ultimately, whatever you put in the name, in the subtitle, even in the keyword list, and even in the long description, you're basically saying to the algorithm, I want to rank for this. And you're saying, I want to rank for a misspelling as opposed to I want to rank for another keyword that people are probably looking for. So I would say use something like the keyword inspector tool, put that keyword in and see if there's any worth to it, basically. If it's got very low popularity, you probably don't want to touch it. If there aren't many apps competing for it and it's got a high popularity, then definitely touch it. It's that sort of decision making, the way I see it. Do you have a similar thought process?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically echoing everything you just said. The only thing I could really add on to that would be, if you're trying, I have done this before when I was working as a freelancer, and I've put in misspellings into the keyword bank on iOS just to see if I can increase the rank, right? And it does work. Now with the latest installment, the latest iOS that came out, iOS 14, I believe they updated it so that if you do a misspelling, it auto corrects it in the App Store, right? And so you might not be able to get away with that as much as you could have in the past, but it's something that could work. It's just like, do you want these users? Are they relevant to you? These are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself. And another thing, if you're trying to increase your rank on a misspelling, you could also work with like Apple search ads, for example, try and bid on that keyword using like broad or exact match if you're familiar with the platform, and just to kind of bolster your rank. But yeah, no, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to, do people actually search for it? Does that search term actually make it into the App Store, into Google? And if the answer is yes, then it's a keyword just like everything else. As soon as you lose that yes, it's probably something you should leave alone. And then the next question from Steven is, how do you find keywords to put into the name of a game? And my answer would be pretty much the same. So my process for finding keywords is very similar to what you were saying before. Look at the game and see what are those benefits that the user is going to get out of them. How will fun be achieved? And then from a more data-oriented perspective is then I start looking at similar games, not necessarily competitors, but games that have a similar maybe play mechanic, similar colors, similar attitude towards the user, whether they're casual or hardcore. And then I pick a nice selection and I start looking through them. We have a report where you can put all the apps or games you want together, and we'll give you the union of all their keywords. And so that's a really easy way to see who's doing what and who's doing things across the board. And that's an easy way to see, okay, so all these games are using, let's say, racing game or car racing or customizing cars, even though that's a keyword before I said was not good. And you can see then based on that the popularities, and then you can inspect keywords one by one and see their performance, the top performing apps in those. And then from there the question becomes, I see this keyword that seems interesting, are there other relevant keywords? And we do that using machine learning. We'll go and we'll scan keywords for what they do, and so you can quickly switch to that tab in Inspector, and you'll get an idea of what other keywords other apps are using really, really quickly. You can do this by hand too, just by looking at the results. But then, so come up with an idea and then develop it by seeing what other apps are doing. That's kind of my process, and it's super easy. But again, going back to the original idea of intent, you do want to attack that sort of, what does that fun moment look like, and how do you translate that fun moment to words? What is your take on this?
Yeah, nothing to add. You you nailed it, man. Yeah, really, really well put. I think it's just always, if I could summarize this chat, it'd really be, whether you're optimizing for apps versus games, it's really just keeping.
Uh-oh. Is Parker frozen for everyone or just me?
The user in mind and making sure that you're
Parker's
optimizing what they want and their desires, right? You hear me?
Yep. You froze and now you're back.
Awesome. Yeah. Just really quickly, I was just saying, just make sure to keep the user in mind, no matter what you're doing. At the end of the day, you're trying to make a business for other people in the world. If you have that kind of heart and you're really just doing this to show off, hey, this is the app, this is something I created, this is something I put my time into, and I'm making something that I believe is quality. Show off that quality, put in the effort, put in the work. Work with hire a graphic designer, hire a video production person. Make sure that you separate yourself from the rest of the pack by putting in the time and effort, right?
Yeah,
that's absolutely. In my mind, that's the thing that's really going to separate you. And
yeah, I think 100%. I see 2 follow-up questions from Steven about the more specifically how to actually do it. So how to take those keywords that you found and put them in the name. And the game in question is called Boulder Dash. And the question is, how do you add more keywords to Boulder Dash? And I think Steven answered Steven's own question by saying Boulder Dash the retro puzzle game. Works like the get completely eliminated when the algorithm sees them, so you can drop that in my opinion. But Boulder Dash : retro puzzle game or comma retro puzzle game or some separator that is not a character, those work pretty well in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I think we have reached the end. Let's see if we have, I guess we have time for one more because we started a tiny bit late. Is there a particular one that you want to take a stab at?
Yeah. I'm looking here 1 second. Oh, I like this one by Eric here. For iOS games, it's best to use the full 30 seconds for the video, assuming it's good quality, or better to try to do it in a shorter time? Yeah, it's a good question. So when it comes to video, when it comes to the App Store, from what I've learned, the average user, if they're just scrolling through the App Store and they're searching in the name of a game, right? You pop up maybe second or third. You're only going to have maybe like 1-2 seconds to really captivate them. So when you're creating a video, and that's going to be the first thing, assuming they see, if you include it on either the Play Store or the Apple App Store, you really want to have the best moment, the winning moment, the satisfying moment, the things we were talking about earlier in this chat at the very beginning, within those first 1-2 seconds, something that's really going to say, hey, this is the statement of the app. This is the thing that is the most fun, and this is why you should download it. And that should be really presented within the first few seconds. Now, using up the full 30 seconds, I think that is a good idea. I think you can, use that time to really just show off all the other content. And there's going to be some people that are interested in learning more about your app. Maybe there's going to be a few people that spend the extra time to watch that full video. And for those people, they really want to understand what the app is about before diving diving into it. And so, just having that time to show it off is going to be important for those select few.
I absolutely agree. I think the more time you have, the more time you should take. We're not talking about hours or days. We're talking about seconds. And that also goes to the next question from right below from Andre, who's asking, what's the optimal number of screenshots for Google and Apple? And in my opinion, it's as many screenshots as you can give to the store and they will display for you. If you, and I've said this before in all the teardowns, if you don't have enough things to show in 10 screenshots, you're probably not thinking about what your app does. Because even if for an app that has one feature, I can think of 10 ways to do it. And so that would be my take.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cool. So I think there's still some questions, but I think we're out of time. Maybe one last one. Vlad asked what we think about Blackhead ASO. My answer is don't do it. It's not worth it. If you get kicked out or into the sandbox, you just need a new developer altogether to even get out of it. Similar to what I would say if you asked me about SEO, something that I've seen happen before. So I think it's not worth it. And I think we have to cut it here. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Parker, for all this great stuff. There's a lot that comes from your experience that I've even taken note of. And this was really great.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ariel. It's been a blast.
Of course. Have a great evening, night, rest of morning, wherever you are. And we will be doing this again in about 2 to 3 weeks. So keep an eye out for an email in your inbox. We'll also be sending the video probably later today or early tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. Happy Wednesday, everyone. And thank you again, Parker. Take care.